into the AFC North. I had the Baltimore Ravens at 13-4. I think I have them as the best record in the NFL. My only concern, I will say, with this team comes with the line. The only starters that are returning are Ronnie Stanley and Tyler Lindenbaum. You have Andrew Voorhees was a 7th-round pick last year. I believe he tore his ACL like at the combine or something like that. And then, you went out and you drafted Roger Rosengarten, but I think they've had Patrick McCarry playing right tackle for now. And then you have Daniel Falele at right guard. So
very interesting about the Falele thing.
Yeah, I think isn't he like gigantic? Like I could be wrong. Isn't he like 300 something? 300.
I was literally going to go on this little just tidbit when I was 6'8", 380 playing
for a guard.
Now, again, the weight I don't have a problem with at all. I mean, it doesn't matter. But he's so long. Picturing him playing guard is quite interesting. But the Ravens, they're seeing it in camp every day. They have a vision that I don't. I just wanted to throw that out because that is quite interesting.
I think the Ravens are kind of like a team like the Packers or the Cowboys where they have been able to kind of keep their line functional and actually pretty good, even if they don't have the all-stars playing there. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because the other area that does scare me is they've never really been a team in the recent years that have got their production off the edge, and they are definitely not going to be getting that this year.
If anything, too, it's like edge by committee. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
It's like they don't have like the guy out there.
Right, and so I'm not worried about their defense. I think Zach Orr is now going to be their defensive coordinator. He was their linebacker coach last year. And I think they'll be okay. From my understanding, the main difference between Zach Orr and Mike McDonald is Zach Orr was a player. So everything is not going to be, just from what I've gathered from like reading and listening about the Ravens this year, is it's not going to be like, okay, this down and distance, we're going to call this play because this does this and this does this. This lines up with this yardage. And obviously there's going to be little bits of that. But Zach Orr was a player, and it's like, let's try to create like an explosive play here because we know we can force them to do this and this down and distance. And it's a little bit more like, I don't want to say freestyling, but a little bit more like, I guess, calling plays on vibes compared to like, the straight like guidelines. So
giving the players control more than anything.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm gonna be interested to see what the Ravens defense looks like this year. I really do think I was listening to the Athletic football show today, and they made a really good point. And they're talking about how Lamar has always been, the main point of attack on offense. And he's still going to be the main point of attack, but who has really been like the secondary punch, right? It's something like Mark Andrews, right? Who's a very good player. But now your secondary punch is Derrick Henry, who has played behind a horrible line, a pretty bad line in Tennessee. Now, the Ravens line isn't proven. If they can be average, just imagine what a rushing attack of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry could do. I do have a little bit of reserve with the wide receiver room as well. Once it gets past Zay Flowers, but I think they've been able to work with that. Second year in the offense, I just think like if you give me any team in the NFL besides the 49ers, the Ravens are the other team that I'm going to pick to have the best record.
No, and that's totally fair. I ended up, and you know what? I don't want to spoil anything, but I didn't have. How about this? This is good. This is good. Not spoiling much. I didn't have any team personally past 12 wins, okay. Right? Like my cap was 12 wins. I had the Ravens rounding out at 11-6. Now, again, Ravens fans, like I've prefaced to a lot of teams, does that mean that that's for sure how I think you guys are going to finish? No, absolutely not. To your point, Hunter, I could see the Ravens finishing. Ravens could have a year 14-3, right? 13-4. I could totally see something like that. 100%. This is just how it ended up the week to weeks in. But to the bottom line of this team, right? Just to round out, because you homered on every point that I really needed to hit on. But look, you're bringing back almost every piece, almost but almost every really important one. We can say that for sure. Almost every really important piece to this defense, really minus just. I mean, at this point, like not like really, it's actually not even no,
It'd be
like it's
Clowney,
really not
right?
like a big deal, right? This is why you can pick and choose guys that made an impact, but it's not like there's the guy who's starting over them, they're losing impact, if that makes any sense. Like all in all, this Ravens defense is absolutely stacked. Probably on paper, the best defense in the league, right? I mean, I think we can agree with that on paper. And then you come over to the offense, and like you said, yeah, Voorhees, you're worried because coming off of such a major ligament tear, later round pick, you don't know what to expect. There's no doubt about that. I think Roger Rosengarten in this offense specifically too. I think he's going to have a really good rookie year. I think he's going to fit into this offense really well. You're really just worried about the guard situation, Falele and Voorhees. Falele is very interesting though, because having a 380-pound 6'8" dude at the guard spot is just going to look. I mean, I just can't wait to see how it looks on tape week one. That's going to be quite interesting. But we'll see how it goes because it's either there's plenty of ways that doesn't work out. But I'm getting off on tangent. The bottom line is receiving core, like you said, Hunter. That's the biggest thing with this team where I still am a little worried because we've seen teams have showed us when you can effectively really take Lamar out and you have a defense that can really hold the edge and really maintain gap integrity on their rushes, and the plan is very gap oriented. You really can find a way to give the Ravens a day. And I think that's my biggest thing with the Ravens is until they can just really, it's been the word of the offseason for them. They need another alpha on offense. And yes, Derrick Henry is that guy. He is that other alpha, but he plays running back. He's not going to be shaking linebackers out there in the flats. He's not going to be, I'm talking about in pass situations. So they need another alpha pass catcher along with Mark Andrews. And I think I will be really sold that this Ravens team is not that I'm already not. This Ravens team is already competing for the Super Bowl. But I would say that on paper, the Ravens would officially be top dogs on paper if they could just get that other alpha. They just haven't done it yet. And it's been our big gripe all off season.
I think Zay Flowers would be a great like 2. I don't know if you ask him to be that 1, if he can be that guy. And just kind of last thoughts on the Ravens personally. I don't think Eddie Jackson is burnt toast just yet. I think he still has a little bit of juice in him. And I think adding Eddie Jackson to the room with a safety room of Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton allows you to move Kyle Hamilton around on that defense because we know how versatile he can be. So adding Eddie Jackson to play with Marcus Williams and then being able to take Kyle Hamilton and really have him blitz off the edge, like play wherever you want him to play, I think adds such a great versatility to this defense. But let's move in to the Cincinnati Bengals. Where did you have them ranked, Dobbs?
All right. So I had the Bengals, funny enough, 3rd in the division. Ooh. But Bengals fans, don't worry. You guys still made the playoffs. I had them finishing out at 11-6, 3rd in the division. And so let's kind of start with the Bengals, right? I think like the bottom line is this, because I think you'll agree with this, Hunter. When you really wrap the Bengals up and you take a look at them on paper, their roster just realistically doesn't compare to some of the other top teams position to position, right? Like we're looking at this roster and we're saying, okay, Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow have showed us that they are an incredibly elite duo together when Joe Burrow's healthy. And the Ravens, or not the Ravens, the Bengals are kind of in the situation now, but you could even you could compare it to how the Ravens have been, where that when Joe Burrow's out there, much like when Lamar's out there, other stuff doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like there's such X factor game changers that you're putting not all of, but you're putting 90% of your faith that you're going to win the game in that, yeah, Joe Burrow's going to go have himself a day. And there's nothing wrong with that. Joe Burrow has showed us throughout the course of his college career and now in his NFL career that you can put that pressure on his back and he's going to deliver. Now it's just a matter of, is he going to be able to be out there long enough and can they keep him healthy enough that he can do his thing enough this season to get them into that playoff spot? Because if he's healthy for the majority, if not the whole season, the Bengals very likely are going to make the playoffs just off of his back. That's kind of like the reality and the narrative for this team. But again, I want to be clear, not like they don't have other really good players on this ball team, right? Like Mike Hilton has turned into an elite slot corner. Geno Stone is one of the better safeties in the league, right? We all know about Trey Hendrickson. The O-line is definitely starting to really come together. You have an identity, you have a vision past just this year, right? Like as far as the draft went and everything, like the Bengals have a vision. I'm really excited for this receiving core, really excited for Burton. I think the way that this receiving core is going to mesh is going to be a very electric unit. And then, back to the running back Like apparently Chase Brown is supposed to have an amazing year this year, and we've just been sleeping on Chase Brown. If word out of the Bengals, Bengals training camp, Bengals land over there is right. So the Bengals, it's not like they're far from shabby, and they still have a lot of positions filled. Bottom line I'm trying to make is just tie everything together. They're not like a top dog roster like some of these other AFC teams, but when you have Joe Burrow on the team, how are we going to sell them short? How are we going to sell this team short?
That's pretty much my synopsis of the team in terms of like, I'm not going to sell Joe Burrow short if he can stay healthy. And I have them at 10-7, making the playoffs as second in the division. I don't know how, if Joe Burrow's healthy and Jamar Chase stays healthy, and I really don't know what to say outside of the fact of the Bengals come in every year, regardless if they start slow and compete, right? Oh, Ari, hold on. This goes for a team. The Patriots are working to trade Pro Bowl Matthew Judon to the Falcons.
That's a major Falcons W. Falcons fans, major, because Falcons fans know how bad they need that man on the roster.
Oh, they really need pass rush. But anyway,
that major W Falcons fans, hey, from as an honest Saints fan, like I say, I'm always objective. That's a major W down there in the ATL.
Breaking news on, mind you, this is being recorded August 14th. But with that being said, back to the Bengals. I think that Zach Taylor has done a phenomenal job coaching the Bengals for so long. And Burrow, I think, is in a spot where he looks a little bit bigger. He added some weight, and they have been trying to get back to that Super Bowl for quite a couple years now. And I think, I don't want to say this may be the year to do it, but I'm not too worried about them not having the best roster, if that makes sense, right? Like, we'll get into the Browns next, and I think the Browns have a much better roster, but when we talk about quarterback position, at the end of the day, Deshaun Watson played like a bottom 5 quarterback last year. Joe Burrow is not a bottom 5 quarterback by really any stretch of the imagination. So that offense, I don't think they lose a step with Tyler Boyd leaving. I think with Jermaine Burton there, they're snapping. And the reason they franchise tag T. Higgins is because they're trying to win a Super Bowl this year. If they figure it out with Trey Hendrickson, I think they improve their safety room. I think their defense is still pretty decent. I don't understand why this team cannot make another run at the Super Bowl. And if you look at their schedule, they play New England, they play Washington, they play Carolina, they play the Giants, they play Las Vegas, they play the Chargers, depending how you feel about them. They play Tennessee, and they play Denver and Pittsburgh, depending on how you feel about them. They have a favorable schedule. This could be a realistically a 11-win team, kind of like you had them. So this team, I think, is poised to make another run. And if it's going to be any year, it's going to be this year, because then they're going to have to pay Chase, they're going to have to pay Higgins, and it's just going to be a completely different team, I feel like, next year.
And a lot of these guys that have been staples on the team for years, they're getting older. It's just something we got to, Bengals fans, I'm not trying to make you upset, but it's got to be acknowledged, right? I mean, Von Bell is getting older, right? Logan Wilson's getting older. Jermaine Pratt's getting older. Sam Hubbard's getting older. I mean, when you look across the board, the core that was for so long, and especially that 20, how am I blanking on the year here? The Bengals Rams Super Bowl. I was blanking because I think of the year the season was played, and then I don't think of what was the year the Bulls was played?
It was 2020, I believe.
Okay, so I know, because I say that's what I thought. I was gonna say 2019, and then at 2020. But you guys get what I'm saying.
Wait, Burrow was drafted in 20.
No, it's for 2021.
It's a 2020 season. I think it was 2021 though.
That's where I always get messed up. Is that I know it's the season. You got to carry over the year from the season, but getting sidetracked. The bottom line is, as Bengals fans, know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it was 2021 because I remember it was his second year.
That core from that team, they're getting older. And now, not to say that the window is closing, but the window with that group, realistically, the window with that group is closing. So, that's kind of just the reality for the Bengals right now. And I don't think Bengals fans would disagree with that. I think that they would say, as long as they're not in delusional land and they're willing to be honest, that yes, this is still a really good team. This is still a really good roster. But if you don't do it this year or very soon, there's going to be a significant amount of turnover before you can really get back to being that real championship contender, no matter how much Joe Burrow does for this team.
All right, let's move in to the Cleveland Browns. I had them at 10-7 as well, but due to the fact of divisional wins and everything like that, I have them actually missing the playoffs. And I think the Browns have done a good job. I think their defense is going to be phenomenal again this year. I struggle with Deshaun Watson a lot. I have not seen, watching him these last couple years on the Browns, he doesn't have any of the magic that he had in Houston. And I think that comes from not playing. I think it comes from outside circumstances, obviously, and then that affects him on the field. With that being said, though, I don't know if Deshaun Watson is ever going to be that top 5 quarterback ever again. But the Browns don't need him to be that. The Browns literally need him to be average. If he can be league average, this Browns team can go far. I really, really dislike their wide receiver room. I think Cooper is fine, right? But you go out and you trade for Jerry Jeudy. Elijah Moore, I don't think is what a lot of people thought he was. I think that was a good idea to go trade for him at the time. And when you look at the receiver room, who do you have hope for outside of Tillman? Tillman is really the only guy that can make a difference in the receiver room outside of Cooper. And
Browns fans will tell you that we're sleeping on Jeudy, but we've already had this discussion. We already had this discussion plenty of times.
He's just very inconsistent. And the same thing with Elijah Moore. You need consistency out of your top 3 receivers, or literally top 2. I think another thing that scares me is that was a horrific knee injury to Nick Chubb.
Well, and also let's just throw this out while we're on the subject, because I almost forgot. I know you would have forgot real quick too. We can't glaze this over. Now all of a sudden we're in a land here, Hunter, where the Browns and Amari Cooper beefing on the low. Amari Cooper dropping sub tweet, sub Instagram. I almost said subconscious. You get what I'm saying. Amari Cooper's out here dropping hints that they rubbed him the wrong way. And when you're a team like the Browns that's been struggling for so long to finally get a culture going together, the last thing you want to do is really piss off one of the guys that kind of really help you get that culture going. Just a tidbit. We'll keep moving forward with the Browns here. I just had to throw that out while we were still on the offensive subject.
I mean, I love their offensive line in terms of what they can do. I like the interior that they have. They went back and got Nick Harris from the Seahawks after he just left. I like their tackle situation. I don't love it, but it's decent. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing to me is I don't trust Deshaun Watson to be good. I don't.
It's the only thing you think about with this team, because that's the problem, Hunter. Is you look at this team on paper and you're you're rubbing your hands together. You're they're cooking. And if you had no knowledge, if you were super casual in football, and I'm talking real casual, casual in terms of me to soccer. I check the stats once every couple years and you get an update. To a super casual fan, you look at this Browns roster and you're like, oh, okay. And they have Deshaun Watson? How could this team not go make a Super Bowl run? But again, right, and everyone knows it's been keeping up. It's not breaking news, but it has been the same Deshaun. But that's not even what I really wanted to, that's not really the whole point of this spiel. What I think that I wanted to bring up is, and we talked about this before, but what this contract with Deshaun Watson really did is I think it highlights 2 things, because I want to really hammer this point home. And again, this is why too, everybody knew that when the contract happened, no matter what was going to come of it, it was very likely going to be a mistake. Because there's this innate thing about human nature, that everybody knows, but it somehow got overlooked on this contract, where if you take away the hunger and you take away the purpose behind showing up every day, and you just say, no matter how bad you do, you're literally going to be worth $250 million. Go figure that most human beings are going to subconsciously take that foot off the gas a little bit. They're going to practice an hour less every day. They're going to spend a little more time at the club. They're going to, and again, and let me be crystal clear on this too, because this is what I'm going to hear in the comments. Is people can say, that's not Deshaun though. It's been because of the injury. I believe it's very much a combination of both. I still think Deshaun Watson is incredibly talented, and he still could be closer to that guy we saw. But at the same time, I also believe that these injuries are definitely taking a big toll on him, especially shoulder injuries, throwing injuries, these throwing arm injuries. The most important spot really is a quarterback, minus your right ACL, meniscus you could have hurt. So I think it's a combination. I want to be crystal clear. It's not just one or the other. I think it's a combination of you gave somebody a guaranteed estate for the rest of their life, and they're also dealing with really critical injuries. It's pretty much the worst case scenario as far as a combination could go for a quarterback.
Which is it's frustrating for Browns fans because the roster that has been built is actually very, very good. And maybe the best roster the Browns have had in quite a while over these last couple of years. So to not be able to get the quarterback right is probably insanely frustrating. What did you have as their record? And you had them making the playoffs, correct?
Well, I was going to say, don't forget though, Hunter, the savior, famous Jameis is waiting in the back.
How could I forget? So
don't sleep on famous Jameis now.
So naive.
No, jokes aside, I had the Browns still. I did have them making the playoffs. Browns fans, I still got you guys. Had them finishing second in the division at 11-6.
So you got 11-6, 11-6, 11-6.
Funny enough, yeah, no, it is crazy. It's crazy. Without getting
it is the best division in football. So
yeah, well, I mean, really, I had another year of same, on paper. So
all right. Moving into our last team of the AFC North, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. I have them at 9-8. I think they are the team that is always the inevitable 9-8. I don't think it matters if you start Russ. I don't think it matters if you start Justin, because whatever Russ is not going to provide, Justin's going to provide. Whatever Justin's not going to provide, Russ is going to provide. I do think this team is going to be a lot better rushing the ball, especially with the upgrades they have to the O-line with Troy Fautanu. They have Zach Frazier. Obviously they have oh my God, why am I blanking on the Georgia tackle they took last year?
Broderick
Jones.
My guy Broderick Jones. I can't be blanking on my guy.
They got Isaac Seumalo as well. But think about this. Think about this, Dobbs. Imagine a jumbo package where Darnell Washington is lining up next to one of your tackles, and Najee Harris is running the ball. You got a 6'8", 300-pound tight end, basically another tackle on the field. Like, there's so much that Arthur Smith is going to be able to do with this offense, and I'm really interested to see if we see more of Najee Harris or we see more of Jaylen Warren. I'm leaning because Arthur Smith usually likes the bigger back. Like, you saw how much Tyler Algier played under him, that I'm willing to bet it's Najee Harris. But I do think that if this Ayuk deal doesn't get done, this is recorded on August 14th, and I think he's probably going to end up with the 49ers at this point, just by seeing what I was seeing today. George Pickens, you're one, man. I don't know how much that pass game is going to improve this year. And I think the defense will be what the defense is. But looking at the division, like, let's say they split their division, right? Let's say they win 3 out of their 6 games in their division. They can play Atlanta, they play Denver, they play the Chargers, they play Indianapolis, but then they got the Giants, or not the Giants. Who cares about the Giants? They got the Jets, they have Baltimore, and then they have they have Baltimore, but then they have Philly, KC, and Cincy to finish the year. With being in the toughest division and then playing those teams, I don't see how you get to 10 wins this year.
No, and let me be clear too off the bat. I had them, I just had them reverse you. I had them 8-9. I'm sorry, Steelers fans. As far as my simulation,
the under 500. Finally,
Tomlin's record, it might be gone this year, but we know Tomlin. He's probably going to show me up and go 9-8 just to tell me to go fuck myself. That's just typical Tomlin fashion. But jokes aside, look, I think you basically said it all, but let's just, more than anything, I really want to get this point off to Steelers fans, though, because let's start with the positives before you open up into the negatives. As you said, Hunter, you have a young O-line group, mostly young, with hopefully 3 future starters that you just drafted this year. On top of that, I love the point you made about Darnell Washington. Just they have a vision for how they want to go about this team, not only in the short term, but the long term. which is also when you're a fan of the team because you at least have an identity that you're going to build around. The Steelers are going to continue to be building around being a hard nose as they've always been. Same Steelers. So if you're a Steelers fan, you got to love that you're not changing your identity and that you know what you're going to be building the core of this team going forward. But now we got to go into the negatives because it's only right. Yeah, I have you guys narrowly missing the playoffs. Same old. And what is really, that's kind of the problem with the Steelers, though, Hunter, is at what point does just saying the same old not suffice anymore? But the Steelers are basically, it is the same old minus Russ and Justin. And as you said about Russ and Justin, how much faith do we have that either of them are going to be the starter long term? And I'll say this, I could see Justin sneaking out, has a good year, not even say like a better year than he had on the Bears, and has a career year, but still has some deficiencies, and they kind of hop on the train for another year or two with not a lot of money on the table. I can see a scenario like that. But of Russ or Justin really being like this team's franchise quarterback, I don't see it happening. I think we both just see this as kind of another transition year in the long.
It's like, Dobbs, you got to think of it though. Like, TJ Watt's not getting younger. Cam Hayward's not getting any younger. Like, to me, this is just a bullshit year. Like, neither of these guys are going to lead you to a Super Bowl.
Like, and again, and I always throw it out. It's not impossible. Like someone, but like, do you think Russ?
I'll say it's impossible. It is not happening.
The chances of Justin or Russ having a Nick Foles 2.0 is just it's under 1% chance. It is basically legitimately impossible. And that's the problem is, and Steelers fans, look, realistically, because that's the problem. I can't even say this because I have a Steelers fan who's a homie who I'm super close with. And no matter how bad and how bleak things are, he will never admit that the Steelers are not a Super Bowl contender anymore. So I can't even say that Steelers fans are going to feel this because I know they're not. And that's what I respect about you guys. I respect that you always want to be the top tier. I respect that you guys always want to be, respected and known as competitors. But like Hunter is saying, at what point are you guys going to get real with the times and say, it's been the same thing for half a decade?
Yeah, it's cooked.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it's been more than half a decade at this point, Hunter. I mean, we're moving on 8-9 years plus of the same old. I mean, at what point do you guys want to stop being kind of like how the Knicks were for so long in the NBA? Is that a good comparison? I think like the Carmelo Anthony Knicks and the Steelers right now, same vibe. Like you got some stars, you got some fun stuff going on, and yeah, they could win a playoff game. But is this team going to go win the championship? No. And like we always say, it's just another time I can repeat the slogan here. If you're not first, you're last. And if you want to be in the middling out just to stay you're competitive, I don't relate. And I think that's kind of where the Steelers have got to move past this era they're stuck in.
Any final thoughts on the AFC North before we move into the AFC South?
Final thoughts. To me, they did like you said, they rounded out best division in football, though. So if you're, AFC North fan, you still got that to hang your hat on.